music sounded so good like this. Fabulous. Time to show, it's your time. You're nominated as the greatest, and you're flowing in your mind. Radio done rated, some outdated. The friends you know, you won't find. True life stages, gotta count the pages.
Good day, and welcome to the Washington Report with Congresswoman Stacey Plaskett. I'm Stacey Plaskett, and I'm blessed to serve as the Virgin Islands delegate to the U.S. House of Representatives. The Washington Report was created to inform Virgin Islanders on current federal issues that directly affect our community. The show's guests will range from political leaders to community activists. This show is all about getting information to you. Therefore, I encourage you to email your questions to askstacey@mail.house.gov to have them answered on future shows. Now, I would like to introduce my guest for today, Neil Ware. Neil is a civil rights attorney and nonprofit leader committed to achieving equal rights for Americans living in the U.S. territories. Raised in the U.S. territory of Guam, Neil worked for Guam's delegate Madeline Bardello prior to attending Yale Law School. In spring 2021, he is co-teaching a legal seminar on territories as a lecturer in law at Columbia Law School. He taught a similar course in spring of 2021 at Yale Law School. Outside of his territorial advocacy, he advises other nonprofit organizations on a broad range of legal compliance issues, previously working as an associate at Loeb & Loeb LLP and Trister Ross Shadler & Gold PLLC. Prior to founding Equally American, Neil was litigating counsel and Supreme Court fellow at Constitutional Accountability Center. Neil clerked on the Alaska Supreme Court for Justice Morgan Christian and now a judge on the Ninth Circuit. He was also a Thomas Emerson Fellow at David Rosen and Associates in New Haven, Connecticut. As a law student, Neil successfully argued CCJEF versus Rel, a landmark case before the Connecticut Supreme Court, recognizing a right to adequate education for Connecticut school children. His commentary has appeared in the New York Times, CNN, Slate, and other media outlets. Neil also competed, this is an important one, in the 2004 Athens Olympics. So, Neil, it's so good to have you on the show.
Absolutely, my pleasure, and that was a very gracious introduction. I always feel in awe being in your presence, so very fun to be on your show today.
Well, Neil, we've known each other a long time, even before I was in office. We've collaborated on a lot of things, but you have become the expert on territorial voting rights, and I know this is the thing that you are most passionate about and have devoted so much of your professional career to this. So I want to ask you, how does the denial of voting rights impact the daily lives of Virgin Islanders and other residents of the territories of the United States?
Yeah, it's the right to vote is something that Americans have fought for a long time. Some Americans literally put their lives on the line, like our mutual hero, John Lewis. Mm-hmm. And it's something that residents of the territories still don't enjoy today. I wasn't able to vote for president myself until the 2008 election in my late 20s when I was working on the Obama campaign. Prior to that, I'd been a resident of Guam, been disenfranchised. Even as when I turned 18, I had to register for the draft for selective service, as all male residents of the territories have to. But it's not simply something that's symbolic or abstract, as you suggest. It's something that really impacts the daily lives of people in the Virgin Islands and Guam and other territories, whether that's in things like disparities in Medicaid funding. The territories receive cents on the dollar compared to other jurisdictions for this critical federal program. There's many U.S. citizens receive something known as supplemental security income, a basic income for lower income folks who are disabled, senior citizens, or blind, to provide them a basic level of human dignity by providing financial support. Residents of the Virgin Islands, Guam, and Puerto Rico were completely ineligible for that program, leaving these most vulnerable citizens at the mercy of whatever their family or others can provide for them. So these are decisions that have life and death consequences every day for residents of the territories that every other American community gets a say in through their voting representation in Congress, through a vote for president. And this kind of democratic accountability leads the political branches in the federal government to be more responsive to the needs of these citizens. And I think residents of the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico particularly felt that after Hurricanes Maria and Irma devastated their communities, looking stateside to states like Florida and Texas and the benefits that citizens there were receiving and the responsiveness of FEMA and the federal government, whereas there were many delays in the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico. And in fact, many citizens and communities in both of those territories are still waiting for some of these benefits to come in and some of the rebuilding to take place after Maria and Irma, now, several years after the fact.
So it's your position that the reason there are delays, the reason that there are disparities in formulas, federal formulas, are because we don't have the right to vote, that you believe that that's a major factor. Is there anything that makes you quantify that? It appears that that's the reason, but how do you actually show that that's the reason why they aren't receiving those things?
I think it's pretty clear. When I worked in Congress in the early 2000s, my boss at the time, Madeleine Bordallo, and her colleagues like Donna Christensen introduced bills to address these disparities. They were fighting for equality for their citizens so that they could enjoy the same benefits and the same rights, really, as Americans in other communities. And I know now you are fighting that same fight, introducing legislation, working with the administration to push these forward. And, why has it taken 20 plus years for the federal government to recognize these basic questions of dignity, equality, and who we are as Americans? And really the only common denominator that we can point to is that these are citizens who are disenfranchised. They don't have the same vote as other American communities. And so even when the representatives are as effective as you are and as Donna Christensen was, that can only get so far without the kind of political power that other communities enjoy through representation in the Senate, through being able to vote for president, having a congressional delegation. All these things are critical, which just shows all the more credit to how effective you've been without a vote. Imagine a Stacey Plaskett who actually has the same voting rights as her colleagues in the House. Watch out there.
Well, I think about people may say that, oh, well, it's because you're so small, but then you look at a place like Puerto Rico, which has over 3 million residents, and they still have some of the same issues that we have when it comes to formulas and the others. So it's not a size issue. The only commonality that we can safely say is not having that full voting representation in the House, having no senators. Whenever I have legislation that has passed the House, I still got to try and muster up somebody in the Senate who's willing to support this, who's not a representative of the Virgin Islands. And each one of the territories face that problem all the time. I guess another question that I would ask is, what historical precedent can Virgin Islanders and other residents of U.S. territories look to in terms of expanding voting rights?
So, as I said, our American history has been one of continual expansion of the right to vote. When, the United States was formed, when the Constitution was first enacted, it was really only white male property owners who really enjoyed the right to vote. And at the time, that was very progressive because in other countries, they didn't have that. But it left out enslaved people. It left out women. It left out all kinds of folks who today are able to enjoy the right to vote through things like amending the Constitution. So residents of the District of Columbia, they don't live in a state, but they can vote for president because of the 23rd Amendment. Mm-hmm. The 19th Amendment expanding the right to vote for women. Constitutional amendments expanding the right to vote for people who are 18 to 21 years old. There's this history of expanding the right to vote that is central to who we are as Americans. And yet the 3.5 million citizens living in the territories who, not coincidentally, are 98% racial and ethnic minorities, remain disenfranchised. Mm-hmm. And so the question of race, and this is a racial justice issue, are absolutely another central issue here.
Neil, I know you have a new person in your household with you. Who's with you right there?
So this is Cora Louise Weir. She's just over a month old. And this is actually a perfect transition to talk about another reason why people are disenfranchised in the territories, the insular cases. Uh-huh. Two of my students at Columbia actually sent me this onesie. I don't know if you can see it on the screen. It says, "Overturn the insular cases." Two of my students sent me that knowing, just how much I care about these issues. But mm-hmm. These are a series of Supreme Court cases that established a doctrine of separate and unequal status for residents of the territories, decided now, over 120 years ago, and decided by the same court that decided Plessy versus Ferguson, grounded in that same kind of racism, and basically holding that the United States could hold places like Puerto Rico, Guam, and the Virgin Islands perpetually as colonies, rather than extending to them eventual full political participation. And so these are some of the roots of discrimination, disenfranchisement that residents of territories are fighting against. That finally, and due no small part to your leadership, we're actually starting to push back against at the federal level. Last Congress, the first ever congressional hearing focused exclusively on voting rights, held with your leadership. This Congress, the first ever hearing, held condemning the insular cases. Right. Again, held because of your leadership. And these are examples where we actually are making progress and moving these issues forward in all three branches of the federal government.
Well, I know that I've been working here with my colleagues from the territories, and actually some members who are not from the territories, but who really believe in this fight as well. Members like Darren Soto in Florida, members like Congresswoman Yvette Clarke in New York, other members who really see that people living in the territories are not being treated equally, and that voting rights, as well as many of the formulas, many of the ways in which Congress and others treat the territories, is unequitable and has actually led to many of the financial issues that we have, right? So if the Virgin Islands had been treated in the same federal formulas for highways that we had in the early 90s when we were taken out prior to that, we would have had sufficient funds to prepare our ports, prepare many of our roads, so that when the storm surge came of Hurricane Irma and Hurricane Maria, we would have been ready. But you, Neil, and others like you have really been working on the federal side, particularly in the judiciary branch. And you have filed, along with even Virgin Islanders, I know you've worked with Emile Henderson, worked with Pamela Colon, Samaj Johnson, so many others, so many people in the Virgin Islands and the Virgin Islands Bar Association. I know that you have, there's been some linkages now with the New York State Bar. So talk to us a little bit about the lawsuits, the federal lawsuits that you have, Equally American has filed, asking the courts to recognize equal citizenship in U.S. territories. Why should Virgin Islanders follow these cases?
Yeah, the federal courts offer a tremendous opportunity where it's actually a level playing field. That the arguments and that we can make in court doesn't matter whether you have voting representation or not. You can still make your case. And unfortunately, it's been a little bit of one step forward, two steps back. In these issues, getting some big wins while also having some setbacks. Sorry,
I love this. This is real life right here.
Yeah, this is a real deal.
Where's your son? Because I know you have a little son as well.
He's in daycare, so we got one of them taken care of. My wife's got a doctor's appointment, so I've got my hands full today, don't I?
But you know what I thought was really interesting, Neil, was when we first started working on some of these lawsuits, what was really interesting was the support that we got from sectors of the legal community that one would not have normally thought would have been supportive of overturning the insular cases or recognizing citizenship in the U.S. territories, right? So we were able to get, and you were able to work with Ted Olson, who had been the former Solicitor General in the Bush Justice Department. He was the lead attorney supporting these cases as it was making its way to the Supreme Court. And then Paul Clement, his successor as Solicitor General at the Justice Department as Solicitor General, was the pro bono attorney for all of the elected officials. So myself, Madeline Bardello, former governors of Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands, former Governor John DeYoung, at the time Governor Mapp, former Governor Turnbull, all signed on to these along with Donna Christensen and so many members of the territories to say that, listen, part of the insular cases say that these territories do not have the mechanisms to follow democratic law, to follow democratic election procedures, or even their governments themselves are in nascent young forms. And all of the members from the various territories were able to show that, listen, since becoming part of the United States, we have all developed into the same systems, the same democratic legislative branches of government and executive branches of government as the rest of the United States. And one of the things that people are unaware of is that we, living in the territories, are not monolithic people, that we fall on both ends of the political spectrum and both major parties, right? So often when there is a member in Congress from a territory, oftentimes it's followed that their corresponding governor is someone of the opposite party as well. So we're not even often of the same party necessarily just because we're from a territory and are people of color. I mean, right now we have 3 members of the territories that are Democrat and 2 members of the territories that happen to be Republican as well. So what do you see as the future of the federal lawsuits, and what lawsuits should Virgin Islanders be following, and how do we lend our voices? How do we support the work that's being done by yourself and others like you at the judiciary branch and as well in Congress?
Yeah, there's 2 big cases right now, either at the Supreme Court or making their way to the Supreme Court. The first one, United States versus Valle Madero, addresses this question of, can Congress discriminate against residents of territories in federal benefits programs based solely on where they happen to live? So this is a case the Supreme Court took up earlier this year. There's going to be oral arguments this fall. The briefing is currently underway. The United States just filed a brief last week in the case defending this ongoing discrimination, even as President Biden issued a statement saying that this kind of discrimination goes against the White House's values and principles.
Just so you know, Neil, I did call the White House and was like, what are you guys doing? You have a Justice Department that's upholding what President Biden believes to be unconstitutional in terms of people from other states when they move to the territories not having their SSI. And in fact, the president, and even in the president's budget, he sent down statements saying that he believes and his administration believes that SSI should be expanded to the territories. And then you have an attorney general and a Justice Department that files a brief that is against expanding SSI or following the lower courts, which have said that this is unconstitutional to not have SSI in the territories. It was just confusion to me.
Yeah, it's very confusing, and it shows the challenges that we face, not just in the courts, but really all three branches of government, and the importance of pushing all three branches of government. So I applaud you for pushing the administration and holding their feet to the fire. It's great to see them come out in support of addressing these legislative fixes, legislation that you've either introduced or co-sponsored. But the White House really needs to show that priority is a real one and bring these issues across the finish line, which in this Congress is always easier said than done. So we'll have to see how that goes. In the meantime, the Supreme Court case is a great opportunity for Virgin Islanders and other residents of the territories to have their voice heard. I know that a number of elected officials from the territories may be filing. Some of the territories themselves may be filing. The Virgin Islands Bar Association has been very active in this case. And so this is an important opportunity in all three branches. The other case to follow, which actually just was decided literally half an hour ago before this call, is a case involving citizenship in the territories. So do people if you're born in a U.S. territory like the Virgin Islands or Guam or American Samoa, do you have the right to citizenship? Or can Congress decide unilaterally that you aren't a citizen? We had prevailed on behalf of our plaintiffs in the district court. And unfortunately, the 10th Circuit reversed that decision just earlier today in a vote of 2-1. We were very disappointed in the result. We're still reviewing the result, and we'll see what lies ahead. My baby Cora, who does not like the insert case, really doesn't like it. So we're going to be seeing what we can do to continue this forward. This may be an issue that needs to be resolved by the U.S. Supreme Court. And we're looking forward to making arguments in that regard. And so that's a case to follow because the federal government's position is that even though you're born in a territory, U.S. soil, Congress can say you aren't a citizen.
Right.
Certainly clear moving forward, potentially even the case under their argument retrospectively. So someone who's been a citizen their whole life, born in the Virgin Islands, Congress may be able to take that away under the federal government's view, which is very disturbing. And again, this discrimination grounded in the insular cases, grounded in this long-standing discrimination. So these are two big cases that Virgin Islanders should be paying close attention to, and also paying attention to how the White House and DOJ engages in these cases and how Congress acts to address these things through legislation.
But rather than just pay attention, what should people do?
I think they should write the president. They should support our work at Equally American, equalrightsnow.org. We're working to organize a broad grassroots community to not just argue inside the courtroom, but also to argue these issues in the political branches. The oral arguments coming up in the Valle Madero case, we're working on organizing events the day of the Supreme Court argument. So having Virgin Islanders who are stateside or who are able to travel stateside show up on the day of the argument, have their voice heard, lobby their members of Congress. If you're a Virgin Islander living in a state where you do have voting rights, you should call your member of Congress and ask them to co-sponsor Congresswoman Plaskett's legislation. Ask them to vote for her legislation. Have them call their senator to co-sponsor this legislation or introduce this legislation. It's going to take everyone's efforts, Virgin Islanders both in the Virgin Islands and those living stateside, to get this through. And, I think the time is now. The political opportunity is there. We have the Supreme Court's attention. We have the White House's attention. And I know that with the politics in Congress and with Congresswoman Plaskett on the Ways and Means Committee, the political opportunities there have never been better. This window is going to potentially close at the end of this congressional cycle. So we really have about a year left, a year and a half left to get this through. So the time is now to act, and people's labor they can put into this, financial resources that can be devoted to this. It really should be an all-out effort to pressure all three branches of government to finally do what is right, finally recognize that citizens in the Virgin Islands and other territories are equally American.
Well, Neil, thank you so much for all of your work. And thank Cora. She was so good for most of this. I was trying to watch your shaking game, your rocking game. It's pretty on point. You're pretty good.
Some parenting tips here. You're a pro.
No, you're doing well, and bless you and your wife with your baby. And thank you for all that you do to support Virgin Islanders and the people of all of the territories. So finally this year, we'll continue with the tradition of ending the Washington Report with some words from Stacy. June 1st marks the beginning of the 2021 Atlantic hurricane season, but we've already seen tropical disturbances in our territory. This year, the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, forecasts that we will have an active season with 13 to 20 named storms, including 3 to 5 major hurricanes. As we approach this very critical time, I urge each of you to start preparing your homes, your businesses, your families if you haven't already. You can visit my website at plaskett.house.gov to download our hurricane preparedness checklist. It contains very useful information about how you can best prepare for this time. Also, please utilize the resources provided by the Virgin Islands Territorial Emergency Management Administration, VITEMA. You can visit their website at www.vitema.gov or call their office at 340-774-2244. I pray God's blessing and protection over us all as we walk through this year's hurricane season. Please use this time to prepare, and as always, stay VI strong. Again, if you have any questions you want answered on the show, if you have topics you think we should be talking about, please email them to askstacy@mail.house.gov. Stay VI strong and have a great day.